Good evening, dear viewers. You're watching Al24 News, live from Algiers. Welcome to this special program dedicated to the commemoration of the bombing of Sakiet Sidi Youcef in 1958. 66 years ago, day for day, France carried out the first foreign military attack against independent Tunisia by bombing Sakiet Sidi Youcef, a Tunisian village on the Algerian border. Their motive was the support provided by Tunis to the Algerian National Liberation Army. The day of February 8, 1958 was normal until the French army launched a raid on the town, causing the death of many civilians. The horrible French attack targeted Algerian and Tunisian civilians, and for which the colonizer mobilized 25 planes, which left 79 martyrs, including 14 children and 20 women, and 130 others were injured, in addition to the destruction of the village, all of which led to international mediation. Before getting into the details of our discussion tonight, let's follow this report by Nabil Khazini.
Between the pages of history books, there is a dark chapter called Sakiet Sidi Youcef. On the Algerian-Tunisian border, history documented the most heinous crimes committed by French colonialism. It was 11 in the morning on February 8, 1958. A French military aircraft takes off from the Tbessa military base, flying to the village of Sakiet Sidi Youcef. The French aircraft attacked the village on the weekly market day. The colonizer was aware of that. It was the day where many people gather at the market. More people means more casualties. The bombing killed around 100. Many others were left wounded. The tiny village was destroyed, but its soil witnesses that Algerian and Tunisian blood got mixed in the same land. These massacres remain among the most horrific acts committed by colonial France. They have always constituted a major milestone in the history of the struggle of the two countries, Algeria and Tunisia, and united their common destiny, as they are a symbol of cohesion between the peoples of the two nations. Such events only increase the determination of Tunisian people at that time to stand with their Algerian brothers. February 8th became a day in history that commemorates the spirit of solidarity and brotherhood that continues to deepen between Algeria and Tunisia.
And to talk about this historical event, its consequences, and how it is commemorated each year, I'm pleased to have with me tonight Mr. Abdelnour Toumi, journalist, political analyst specialized in Maghreb affairs, joining us live from Paris via Skype. Thank you for accepting our invite, Mr. Abdelnour Toumi.
Good evening, and thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you for your time. We also host Mr. Ali Izwi, university lecturer, joining us from Algiers, also via Skype and via video conference. It looks like Mr. Ali Izwi is not here yet. We will contact him later on. We start with you, Mr. Abdelnour Toumi. Can you provide us with more context and the details about the circumstances of Sakiet Sidi Youcef, the context and the circumstances that led to this event?
Yes, I mean, the context came in during the hard moment of the Algerian Liberation War and the course of the Algerian struggle for their dignity and freedom after centuries of harsh occupation and acculturation process. And before that, before this year 1958, and which is a turning point in the Algerian liberation war that was led by the National Liberation Army, the ILAN. Before that, the France, or what then the French leaders, political and military alike, call it la guerre d'Algérie, or some before that they call it just some matter of law and order issue. But again, the course that the war of liberation since 1954, followed by the years of 1955 and 1956 to 1957 with the Battle of Algiers. So it did create seriously a political crisis in France, and which led later in 1958 in May to the fall of the Fourth Republic, and later on they called General de Gaulle as a savior, which in the fall of that year created, came in with a new constitution and created what we call it now, the Fifth Republic. So for the again, the French authorities, military and political and military alike, they were not expecting the momentum of the liberation war, and particularly of the ILAN leaders and the FLN leaders, the political branch of the ILAN. So this is why it was, as you stated in the reportage, that it was the first cross-border attack on a sovereign state, or country, which Tunisia has just got its independence from France in 1956. So all these events had led to this tragic and cruel attack and massacre of the villagers on the Algerian-Tunisian borders.
Mm-hmm. How did these events of Sakiet Sidi Youcef constitute a turning point in the history of the Algerian struggle, in your opinion?
It was, again, in terms of among the bases or the masses, among the population, the support that the people in Tunisia had been showing to the Algerian revolution and or Algerian liberation war, in terms of the basis, and also among the leaders, even though, the political leaders of the young and the new Tunisian state that was in process, following the independence or the withdrawal of the French colonial from Tunisia in 1956. So they were kind of they were uncomfortable dealing with the Algerian island leaders in Tunisia and across the border as well. But they did show their full support and showing supporting the Algerian struggle, logistically, politically, and even with manpower. Because, following this event, there were some Tunisians who joined the island, and they were, again, hand-to-hand fighting with their Algerian brothers against the French colonial.
Mm-hmm. Now, what was the international reactions, or what were the international reactions to the bombing of Sakiet Sidi Youcef, and how did it influence diplomatic relations in the region back then?
At that moment, it's not like nowadays, with those social media and so on. There were like big, outlet news such as the BBC, and some French reporters also, who did, write, in what took place on that day in their respective countries. And the British journalists also, they did, write a great deal about the story and made headlines. So that led to, kind of raising awareness, among the public opinion, notably in France, and also crossing the Atlantic, even to the US. And later on, on that same year, it was the Tangier conference that was, held in Tangier with Algerian leaders, Farhad Abbas, who did participate, and from the new Syrian party leader, and even from the Istiqlal party, the Moroccan party. So that, it's an important event that took place, in terms of diplomatically and politically, which from that Tangier conference that led to Zeralda summit in 1988. So here brings us to the integration process and what we had been calling the Maghreb Union sub-regional institution. But unfortunately, for many reasons, this dream didn't come true, for the reasons that we know nowadays.
The Sakiet Sidi Youcef massacre, despite its horror and brutality, failed to isolate the revolution, right? On the contrary, the ties were strengthened by mixing the blood of the two peoples in the massacre. What can you say about that, Mr. Toumi?
That is true. That was one of the reasons of the French colonial army, again, political and military alike. It was a kind of shock and awe, to traumatize the people in both countries, and notably in the remote countries, in the rural area, and to dissociate the people from the leader of the island at that moment. But to the contrary, the year of 58, again, it created not only this raising awareness among the public opinions in Europe and even in the US, but among also in the Arab world, but also, diplomatically speaking, it led to the creation of the Algerian provisional government, and also did give a solid, case for the Algerian leaders to make their case before the international institution. It was before that, before the UN, for instance, and also to lead to the, speak about the Algerian struggle in Algeria against the French colony. And again, just a small detail here, just on that year, on 1958, again, I said it was a turning point, and just by the call of the FLN to the soccer player who were performing in France, for instance, and that led to the, what we call it, the sport diplomacy led by the FLN team that was created in 58, in which led later on to again speak and explain to the public opinions and to the world leaders across the world.
Since we're talking about the Algerian struggle in this very specific context, how did Tunisia play a role in this?
In fact, politically and diplomatically and even logistically, they did play a great deal and a great role helping the Algerians. And not only the Algerian, the people who are on the borders, but also showing strong support for the Algerian leaders at that moment, and also kind of bridging through between the East and the West, and especially from Libya, Egypt, and so on, who were helping the FLN, the island leaders and freedom fighters, again, crossing the border, even though it was tough policy that was initiated by the French authorities, and notably after the installation, it was before the Sakiet Youcef tragic massacre, was the Maurice line or fence that was already, tightened. The French, they were having hard, making it hard for the Algerian freedom fighters to perform or to operate on the borders, or especially, crossing borders between Algeria and Tunisia. And they knew the impact of the Tunisia, where it leads. But the Tunisians, after the independence and during at that moment, did help the Algerians, and they show their full support politically and, again, diplomatically and also logistically.
Right. How did this tragic event contribute to building a stronger relation between Algeria and Tunisia?
Actually, the relations between the people, they were, again, strong and solid, and it goes back to centuries. But that moment did strengthen the relations between the two people. And this is why today Tunisians, they still, brother and sister, they still call Algeria is our big sister, or some they call it like one people in two countries. And this is, one can feel it, and it is sincere, despite sometimes there are some tension and here and there. But in the bottom line, it is serious, and this relation is solid. So, and this, goes also for, again, the not only culturally or traditionally, but also there is this fusion, like between the two people. And this is why today, some, or the majority or large majority in the both countries are calling for strong and solid bilateral relation in the prospect of leading to an integral process in the region.
Now, what's the significance of the joint commemoration of Sakiet Sidi Youcef every February the 8th, every year?
It does mean a lot for the people, actually, for the political leaders, and for, civil society actors, and for the region. Nonetheless, to some point, we are not pushing, for these events, actually, in terms to strengthen strongly the relations between the people, and make this, event not just an event that took place and we celebrate it every year. It is indeed a real picture of what the colonialism is about, and on the other hand, what is the resistance also is about, and how Algerian and Tunisians did resist to, again, as I said earlier, to a harsh occupation, and how in the end of the day, with their resilience, did push out this, again, inhuman colonialism.
So this commemoration reminds both countries about the harsh colonialism and the shared history and solidarity between Algeria and Tunisia.
It does, and it does a great deal, and it means a lot, especially for the elderly. And again, we should now speak about this event, and even include it in our and actually, and to let the new generation again understands what does this mean, and how this took place, and its impact in terms of, again, among the people or within the two countries, and the interactions in their society. And this is why today, again, when we say or we speak about colonialism, and notably what is happening these days at this moment in Palestine, so we can make this parallel about what the Zionists or the Zionist army is doing. It's the same what the French army did in Algeria and in Tunisia and to all its former colonies.
We'll get back to this point in a couple of minutes, perhaps. But are there any possible efforts to seek justice and to seek reparation for the victims of the families, for the victims and for the survivors of the bombing of Sakiet, Sidi Youcef?
I mean, sure, and it's legitimate to ask this question. It's a legitimate question, and also the people who had suffered. Actually, now it's their siblings. I mean, but what they gave or the sacrifice, it's priceless. And I mean, again, they don't need materialistic repair or compensation, because in the end of the day, I mean, what they have offered or what they sacrificed for the land, for for their freedom and their dignity, again, it is priceless, and nobody can make or put a price on it.
Of course, there should be a materialistic and moral and ethical, maybe, apology to those people, not just materialistic justice. We get back to the point that we just spoken about. What lessons can be learned from the bombing in terms of international conflict resolution and the protection of civilians in war zones or during wartime?
I mean, this is again, we come to theory, and it brings us to the dialectic of law and politics, and also of, power in terms of the theory. I mean, we say in French, dominant, dominé. So, and as you know, a colonial, I mean, who is in power, he doesn't care about the law. And we have been saying, watching this every day with the colonial Zionist army doing during the last 4 months, 25 in Palestine. I mean, again, the shameful reaction of the international institution who have been, unfortunately, hijacked by the, international superpower, or the so-called global north, notably Western countries.
Mr. Toumi, Algeria and Tunisia share the same positions in their unconditional support for just causes in the world. Don't you think that the United States struggle the united struggle of the two peoples had a profound impact on the two countries' firm positions towards people's rights?
I mean, there is no doubt about it. I mean, we saw how these two countries, and how, again, to some extent, the two leaders, President Abdelmajid Tebboune and President Kais Saied, who have been showing strong and solid support, for instance, for the Palestinian cause, and also, like Kais Saied, he made any normalization with the Zionist state, it's a red line. And again, for Algeria, it's not the question. So they have been, I mean, these two countries, they have been, again, a strong voice and again, defending the Palestinians and showing full support politically, diplomatically, logistically, and humanly. And we saw how, again, the position of Algeria, it is clear, so that Tunisia, and we saw how the Tunisian, Tunisia did have the leaders of the PLO in the 80s, and unfortunately, I mean, that assassination of Abu Jihad in the late 80s, and also the attack on the PLO office on the same year. So again, Tunisia has been a solid and a strong voice for the Palestinian cause, so that Algeria, and this is why today these two countries are on the same page and also have, again, are on the same trajectory in terms of people to self-determination and help to help people's right to again believe free and resist to the colony. Oh, I'm sorry, to the colonialism.
Colonialism. Thank you very much for your insights, Mr. Abdelnour Toumi. I think we have been able to join Mr. Ali Zoui, university lecturer from Algiers. Are you with us?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for accepting our invite. Mr. Ali Zoui, I want to go back to you and ask you about this very special or very this historical event. How did it constitute a turning point in the history of the Algerian struggle first?
Good evening, first of all, and thank you so much for having me. I apologize also for the inconvenience. I was ready to join you via Skype, then for certain reason I lost the net. So going back to the context of the important event of the massacre of Sakiet Sidi Youcef, which took place in the 8th of February 1958, this event or these massacres, as you described them, formed later on a turning point in the history of Algerian struggle against the French brutal colonialism, and also in the history of the fraternity and cohesion between the two peoples, the Algerian people and the Tunisian people. So let's first of all go back to the context of the events. In fact, when the French army or the French authorities decided to commit this massacre, the French establishment, colonial establishment in Algeria, was living in some very harsh circumstances. It was the last month of the Fourth French Republic. And I believe that the French committed this atrocity out of despair and disillusionment, because the Algerian Revolution had already achieved some tangible victories on the battleground, and the Algerian Revolution started gaining momentum at the international level. But to the bad chance of the French, the massacre, the day of the massacre coincided, and this is very important, it coincided, it happened that some international humanitarian bodies, including the International Red Cross, have been witness to the atrocities committed by the French. And the French initially intended to target this unity and brotherly support from the Tunisians to the Algerian revolutionaries. But later on, the outcomes, they proved to be counterproductive. What happened later on is that the atrocities committed by the French showed to the world and exposed to the world, the international community, the ugly face and the savagery of the French colonial enterprise. Then, after the event, the world had more chance to know about the reality of the French colonialism, and it was very difficult for the French to provide any justifications, because at the end, the entire world have seen that the victims are civilians, including women and children. So the event, the massacres of the 8th February in 1958 are important in two sides. The first aspect relates to the historical fraternity and cohesion and unity between the two brotherly peoples. And the second aspect relates to the trajectory of the Algerian Revolution. It gives a new boost to the Algerian Revolution, especially at the diplomatic and the political level.
Understood. Thank you so much for your insights. I want to ask one more question. How did this event strengthen relations between Algeria and Tunisia?
This is a good question. As I have just explained, I believe personally that one of the main aims of the French behind, committing the massacre, is to target this unity, the brotherly support of Tunisians to the Algerian revolutionaries. But they wanted to embarrass the Tunisian establishment of the time, because we should remember that at the time of the event, Tunisia has it was only 2 years after Tunisia got its independence, and attacking and making a massacre inside the Tunisian lands and the Tunisian borders was intended to embarrass the Tunisian establishment in one hand, and to deter the public in Tunisia from, because they would send them the message that helping the Algerian revolution will cost you much. But what happened was the contrary. Since those events, do believe the conviction that we have a shared destiny has strengthened.
Understood, Mr. Ali. We're running out of time. I have to cut you in here. Thank you so much for your insight and for your time. Thank you, dear viewers, also for following this special program. We'll see you in a bit for our nightly news.